As of the filming of this video, Virginia Key Outdoor Center has been shut down by city officials.
All right, are we live on your phone?
Now we are.
Oh, cool. Okay, nice. Well, hi everybody. My name is Jenny. Welcome to Miami Lit Podcast. Today's episode is a special one because we have gathered here to discuss an issue that is preeminent here in Miami and Miami politics. So we'll start with you, Esther Alonso. You own the Virginia Key Outdoor Center.
I do.
And this is directly affecting you primarily.
It does. So we opened in the park about 7 years ago. We went through an RFP process and we were the winning bidders. And then we received a lease. And because we knew that there would be work that was being done, there was a seawall replacement that had to take place. There was language built in, tolling or a tolling period, because it wouldn't be fair to give you a 5-year lease that's, restricted by local ordinance and then take a year away, from effective operations. But what we weren't expecting was Tropical Storm Irma, and certainly not COVID, which also caused closures because the city was dumping on that very field where they're planning on putting this encampment.
Right.
Yeah. And it was actually not legal dumping. It was in a non-permitted area.
Okay. Before we dive into that, let's continue with our guest. We have Nadir Perez from Ven Vamos, the amazing political campaigning company.
Thank you. So like Jenny said, my name is Nadir. I'm the founder of Ven Vamos Strategies. In the nutshell, we just help really good people win elections and we make sure bad guys lose.
Okay. I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Sounds amazing. And then over on Zoom, unfortunately, could not be here in person, but so gracious of you to join us over on Zoom, Jason. We have Jason Poblete, a Miami native, but who is not now. For quite a while, we lost you to Virginia, and you are an international claims lawyer with the Global Liberty Alliance.
Thanks for having us. Maybe next time we'll do it local. It's a pleasure to be with you all.
I look forward to having you here in person in the studio.
Same here.
So let's dive in, guys. The issue we want to take a look at today is the proposed homeless camp. Is that what they're calling it? At Virginia Key.
So yeah, it's we were shocked. I mean, we've said it before. This is a city park. And you hear it referred to as Virginia Key, 1,000-acre island. It's about 840 some acres as a whole. Part of the property is owned by the county. Part of it includes marinas. There's the Marine Stadium Basin with Marine Stadium, the rowing club. There are several parks on the island, including the historic Virginia Key Beach Park and the park that we're in, Virginia Key Beach North Point. And then there's a landfill site that's a Superfund site that's designated for parkland under the master plan for the island. And that hasn't been capped yet, but it's an area that's been in the process of being remediated. And the area in question is the area furthest to the north, closest to where the mountain bike trails are. And those were trails that were built by volunteers, Virginia Key Bicycle Club. Folks come on site and literally built with blood, sweat, and tears. They fundraise for it. Local bike shops have put in large amounts of money to help build over 9 miles of mountain bike trails.
Yeah. And this is where they would be.
It would be right between the trails and the outdoor center location. And we do kayak rentals, bike rentals, paddle boards, programs for kids and families, environmental education, cleanups, which came about organically because when we got there, the condition was so horrendous that we had to clean it up. Every time it rained, big shards of glass would come out of the ground. So I would always say that the ground was bleeding glass and we would go out there and pick it up so that, it became a usable space. And we have an area where we have healthy grass beds, where, the rest of Biscayne Bay and further north in the state, we have a huge manatee die-off. Right. But in here, there's food for them. So they come and we're getting more numbers than any year before. So we thought, well, let's make sure that people know how to be in the ocean with these animals because they are federally protected.
Mhm.
And so we started offering tours, and we worked with the Save a Manatee program for guidance. And it became it was an educational process for us and for them to an extent as well.
Yeah.
But, it was important that for me, it was always important coming into this public space to make sure that we provided a good public access.
Right.
And I'm proud of what we've done. And, if it all goes away tomorrow,
Mhm.
I can still go to bed at night and know that we did something good.
Yeah.
Obviously, I hope it doesn't, but this is at risk. And it's at risk of taking away Miami's only beaches and a large part of our history.
Definitely. Yeah. For those that are new to Miami, as we've seen a lot of people make Miami their home now, this is a place that, like you said, it carries a lot of history. And it's a safe haven for families, and bikers, everybody to just be outdoors and enjoy a little bit from the hustle and bustle of the city.
I mean, we've heard that this is for the elite.
Well, it's funny because, Miami's technically the city beautiful,
Right.
but yet there's a lot of not so beautiful things about it. When you compare the city of Miami to other cities in the United States and how they're especially dealing with the homeless issue, we have a really bad history in terms of it. So, for example, our commission, right? We have 5 commissioners that they are responsible to pass laws that are going to improve or better our conditions. Now, why they make the decisions they do, that's something that we'll dive into. But before we start getting into that, I kind of want to open it up for us to talk about how we got to this point, right? How this proposal came to be and kind of what were some alternatives that have happened in the past.
Yeah, because whenever for example, when I heard about this, I was like, is this real? How is this even like an option?
Right.
I couldn't understand. And I'm sure I'm not the only one with that reaction.
You're not. There are almost 15,000 people with that reaction that have signed a
Exactly.
petition saying, don't do this. And not only because it's a bad idea for the island, but because it's a bad idea for the homeless folks that they're supposedly trying to help.
Yeah.
It's just a bad idea all around.
Yeah. So
What do you expect when governments get involved in something?
Better. I expect better.
I mean, going back to 1992, that's the year that I went to Washington. I left Miami to go to school, and I go back and forth a lot because I have a lot of family in Miami, and I grew up down there, and I know Virginia Key well. And when I had heard about this a few weeks ago, when it first went public, I was like wondering, wait a minute, isn't Miami-Dade County the town that the year I left down there and I went, there was a whole task force that was put together that I think led to the creation of the Homeless Trust of Miami-Dade County. They're taxing 1% or something like that on some businesses to address the homeless issue. So when I saw certain politicians down there conflate the Virginia Key issue with this homeless issue, I couldn't quite figure that out. And maybe your guest can kind of give us some of the background how we even got to this point, because we're taxing people, we're raising money. The community, you could tell there's a disconnect here. And it's one of the things I learned in Washington over a long, long time. There's a lot of money that's put aside to deal with this problem nationally. But if you look at the data, according to one of the leading homeless organizations, Florida has a pretty good record. Miami-Dade County has a pretty good record of dealing with this problem. So if you just look at the numbers, if those numbers are even accurate, there's been a decline. There seems to be, though, some type of a disconnect between what these politicians are doing with land use issues, with housing. Then there was a pandemic all the way through all this process. And frankly, this whole open borders, sanctuary city politics that pretty much has been Miami-Dade County open doors to let people in. Don't worry about it. Everybody can come here. All that stuff has consequences over time. And now we have this little subset debate, unfortunately, where you're not only having, the work that we focus on is defense of fundamental rights. Property rights are part of the bundle of fundamental rights. And here you have somebody who's out there trying to improve the community, using property law to help improve a part of the society, and important, frankly, historic properties. And then here you have the city government making these, I don't think they're thinking. I think I can see they're trying to just throw this out there for another reason. I think this has nothing to do with homeless people. I think somebody down there is politicizing using the homeless, abusing this, this vulnerable community for some other reason. At least that's what it seems like to us over here. And I hope that you all keep fighting this, because there's resources. And I think the community down there needs to talk to each other and talk to the experts. They can help. But putting people in a camp like that, how insensitive can you get? I mean, I don't even, these guys, they claim they're Republicans. These are not Republicans. These people are Republicans in name only. And I wish I knew what happened to Miami, the Miami I knew that took care of problems and didn't create them. Because that's what happened in 92, by the way. There was a whole task force that went all the way down to the state to deal with this problem. And back then, I think it was the Miami Herald, Alva Chapman and some others who got involved, brought the private sector together, and they brought this private-public project to help deal with this problem. I don't understand what's happened between then and now, that we're having all these arguments, not just about homeless, but also about property rights, which, again, goes to the heart of how the economy functions in a free society.
So I think at first, I would have to say that our local government is a little unique, because with the amount of money that circulates in the city of Miami, you're talking about a city, a municipal city, that these elections or the amount of money that gets spent for a candidate supersedes congressional districts across the United States.
Wow.
So this is an environment where it's pay to play.
Wow.
The decision-making that happens with commissioners is solely funded for their interest. And I firmly believe that. I'll give you one quote from Joe Carollo. Nobody wants the homeless in their backyard. So you have to understand the mentality at which they're approaching this issue. They are simply trying to put a Band-Aid so that they can get some type of advantage when it comes to the polls. There's also a key factor here. When they decided this vote, you have Alex Diaz de la Portilla, Christine King, and Joe Carollo that vote yay, Ken Russell and Manolo Reyes that vote against it. Before the actual vote, you have Alex Diaz de la Portilla, who was actually against it. Now, why did he change his mind? Why do you think he changed his mind?
I don't know why he changed his mind, but he had a very strong and I think very accurate analysis initially, where he addressed the lack of any type of true analysis and even bringing the sites. And, who did they appoint? They appointed I believe it was the director of human relations. And I mean, I don't know what qualifications does the director of human relations have to even come up with this project? I mean, this is a construction project.
At the end of the day, this is land that's nothing's there, and they're proposing to construct and build homes while you still have programs and organizations like Camilla's House and the Chapman Partnership that already deal with this type of issue.
Well, there's no sewer service back there. The only service is the septic tank that we have, which was permitted before the county pretty much stopped permitting septic. We have water service and we have electric, which makes my facility very desirable for a location to do a quick flip. It's when they looked, the city was about to invest somewhere near $3 million to build bathrooms and lifeguard offices at the beach. And part of the reason that the cost got so high is because there was no sewer service back there. So they had to get more creative options. But the connection had to come all the way from the Rickenbacker, which is 2 miles away. And, I can appreciate, especially when it comes to Christine King, I can appreciate her saying, I don't want this in my district. We have a bigger issue than anyone else. Because what I did immediately after this came out is I went to Overtown to the Green Haven project that we volunteered. We've taken folks out there before, and it's a community food garden. And these folks had the neighborhood is being gentrified. So the buildings all around them are, getting bought by developers, and the neighborhood is shrinking. So the tension has increased. And, a lot of these are people that work. Others are folks that are on assistance for a multitude of reasons. But it's a poor neighborhood. And they were out there. David, one of the founders of the garden, describes it as they were out there with volunteers. And he said that 2 groups of men that neither of which owned the land were fighting over a piece of property, and guns came out. So he hid the volunteers. The shooting went on for about 1.5 minutes.
Wow.
He called the police, or someone called the police. I think he did. They showed up 10 minutes later. And then eventually, about a day or so later, a homicide detective came to talk to him. So obviously somebody didn't make it out of there. But there was a young boy who lives across the street. And he came over a few days later, and David says he apologized. He was like, "Man, I didn't think you. I'm sorry. I should have gone and checked on you. Everyone all right?" And he goes, "Yeah, when the shooting started, I had to duck on the floor. And then when I came up, there were 4 bullets in the wall."
My gosh.
You know, why does that young man have to live that way? Here's this bright, conversant, charming, good-looking young man of 11 years, and he went from playing his video game to ducking bullets. This is no way to live. So, I mean, I don't know if the homeless problem affects that. This didn't sound like that. It sounded, a little more territorial. But what David did was they put out a call to action, and I was so impressed because there were about maybe 30 people from different grassroots organization. It was everything from the Circle of Brotherhood to an LGBT group to Black Men Build, which is kind of the yin to the yang to the Nation of Islam and their different philosophies. There were groups of mothers. There was a community. Everyone was there, and they were there and everyone, even though everyone had different philosophies, they were all there for a common purpose.
Right.
And it was beautiful because what we did was we went door to door because David wanted to make sure that the people that lived there knew that they weren't forgotten and that there were resources there for them. They had food. It was moving because, I've had hard times in my life where I had to deal with addiction. My second husband was a heroin addict, and I know what that does to a family and how it bankrupts you, and how it kind of creeps up on you. And we made it through that, and I raised my children after that by myself. I have a wonderful husband today, thank God. But when I was out there, it made me feel even more privileged than I knew I was, in that I had people that were able to help me. And I saw these people, and they didn't have anybody to help them. And what David did that day in bringing everyone out was he told them, "You're not alone." And these people, many of them, and I get a little emotional, many of them stumbled over because they had difficulties walking. They came to this garden to meet people and to have community and to have a meal. When I was walking back, there were 3 ladies walking out, and one of them she was just talking away. She was all smiles, and she's stuck because she was missing her teeth on top and on the bottom. And she had a big smile, so you could, but she was happy. And they're all carrying food containers to take home. And she says to one of them, "Can you believe it? They had hot food and sandwiches, and it was good. And we can eat from here for 3 days."
Wow.
And the other one, who was, just kind of walking, looks at her and kind of smiles. She says, "Yeah, we don't get paid and rent's due. We can eat here for a week." Rent's due. I don't get paid. This is someone who works for a living, who probably has to get on a bus and travel 2 hours to get to a job where she's going to be treated poorly, to make insufficient wages, to provide for the elite. And she didn't have enough. And there was this pure moment of joy in having a meal. And it made me feel so privileged and so fortunate that, I made a commitment with my team and said, we're going to have to come back more, and we're going to have to help them for however we can. Even if it's, we do kayak and bikes and paddleboard. If it means that I can do a fundraising event to help bring funds so that you can provide the services that you're providing, or if you have volunteers that need to do what people do on Virginia Key and go out and just restore their soul, their mind, their energy, so that they can continue doing the good work they're doing, then, maybe I can offer that. If you have kids that have never, amazing. And we do this on our own because we bring a community group out every year. And we more than one, actually, and we take them out, and it's amazing how many of these kids have never been to a beach. They live in the inner city in Miami, away from the coast. Many on the coast, honestly, and they've never been to a beach. So we go out there and we teach them that this is safe and it's okay. You can get in the water, and and it's a beautiful thing. And we've been. So when I say that I'm proud of what we've done, I want to provide more opportunities because This is so vital. Everybody comes here for this. And we have a segment of our population that has been born here, grown here, and will die here. And they don't get to experience the best parts of Miami. And it's a shame. We have to do better. So when you ask, one of you asked, what do we expect from our politicians? I expect better. We're here, they represent the people. Represent the people. Let's put all the nonsense, all the partisan nonsense aside. I mean, the bike club, 9 miles of trails, again, blood, sweat, and tears. And the comment I hear is that, their address is in Hialeah. It's a mailing address. What do you think they do? Build the mountain bike trails in Hialeah and bring them in by car in the middle of the night? I mean, I don't get that. What's I don't understand it. What is the point there? I mean, these people are on site. They're doing work for free. You should be helping them.
Right. Facilitating their efforts.
Yeah. They take kids out there. We teach them how to ride. They do like a community events. They do scouting. A lot of scouting groups go out to do community service work, both with them and with us. And we're all working together to do something. And at the same time, because I think you made a really important point when you were talking about conservatism and so forth. These are not fiscally responsible plans.
Especially not the one that they're proposing.
No, we're looking at spending the absolute most to provide the absolute least.
Yeah.
And then the comparison is, well, the mountain bike club doesn't pay anything to be here. What do you pay?
But it's about what value you bring to the community.
Oh, there's if you had to pay them or us or any of the other organizations that come in to help the community, to help our shorelines, to help our beaches, to help our wildlife, which incidentally, it feeds tourism. People come here, and I say it all the time, and no one wants to recognize it. People come here and stay here longer for what we offer, because we've been able to create a safe environment in which you can see wildlife. Is it going to be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 350 whatever days a year, 65, except for leap year?
Right.
No, it's not. But on a consistent basis, it is, and it lets you have that. My God, it's original Florida, and I think it's so vital that we protect it. And then even for the historic Virginia Key Beach Park. They're getting ready to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars building a civil rights museum. And their rear entrance is 0.7 miles from that location, a 5-minute walk.
But you know what's so fascinating about that museum? That was proposed in 2019 by our current mayor.
Yep.
So then I asked, why is it that he hasn't been as vocal on this issue now? Right? If you look at the dynamic between the mayor and the commission creates laws, and the mayor either says yay or nay. Mm-hmm. So he could have vetoed this. Yeah. He could have stopped this. So my guess is there's a big reason politically as to why he did it, right? So now I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the homeless issue, which is, this isn't a one solution, one policy, one thing that you can do that's going to say it's done. But I can definitely point to ways in which this isn't going to solve the homeless issue. So let's say that this is built on those lands. You're 6 months in, you have the 50 plus houses, or 100 plus houses.
Sheds, no?
There's sheds.
However, you know what I'm saying, little bunk out houses, however it looks. How do you see Virginia Key, how does it transform?
It doesn't.
If that goes, like what happens to the island, what happens to the services, what happens to the people coming in, and how is your business affected by it?
So, well, it's done, but I'm probably done anyways, because I have a big mouth and I've spoken up. So now you're going to hear all sorts of crazy stuff about me. Some of it may be true, but I guarantee that there's nothing there that didn't start or ends with the city of Miami that's wrong. But regardless, we move beyond that. If you were to build, let's say that you had a great program, and the program itself was wonderful, and you had like these 50 to 100 tiny homes that had actual independent living opportunity for them, which these don't, and you had a really pretty fence around them, really pretty chain link fence, and that the security guards were dressed in casual, pleasant clothing as opposed to looking like militia, right? The way that it was described is that they would bus these people in after they get released. And then they would go through an intake process so that they could filter out the folks that are on the sexual predator list, I guess. And then you could voluntarily stay. So let's say that you voluntarily stay, and then there are actually all these mobile services. The reality is, from what I've learned, is that most of the folks that are, because again, this is not just someone who lost their home because the rent was too high and their jobs didn't pay enough. This is for the chronically shelter-resistant homeless population. So these are folks that already have issues with going into a shelter situation, or have had violence problems and gotten kicked out, or just are, in such a dire condition that they need more support. So let's say that someone goes in there, and most of them are dual diagnosis, meaning mental health or substance, and it doesn't matter which one came first. The reality is they both exist. So you have someone that's kicking drugs. They're in this place with a mobile medical facility, and they go into withdrawal. Mobile facility doesn't treat withdrawal. You're talking about life-saving treatment that's often required. But that's not even the problem. Let's say that all that works. You're still having, and I believe, and I'm not 100% on the number, that they said that they were releasing about 800 people a month from county jail, which means that they're going to, they're in and out.
And people go to halfway houses.
Well, they would go to Virginia Key, they go through the intake, you stay in the program. But what about the ones that don't want to go in the program? And those are probably the most dangerous ones.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that we have to worry about. Virginia Key already has a history of having problems with homelessness. When Jimbo's was there, as cool as Jimbo's was in its day, in the end, it was squalor. It was horrible. When the city worked hard to get rid of it because of the drugs, the violence, the prostitution, everything that shouldn't be there was there. And it's unfortunate because it diminished the legacy of Jimbo Luznar. And he had like this super cool place that everybody went and hung out at. And it was always like that in between legal, not legal. But what happened in the end, if he hadn't been suffering from Alzheimer's, I think I mean, obviously my opinion, I think he would have been going insane about it because they destroyed everything. It wasn't quirky. It was out there. But anyways, there are places for people to live. They're wooded areas, heavily wooded areas. So, folks that are in crisis are already living in the outdoors. What is to prevent someone from going into the woods, starting a fire to cook, and on the dry season, burning down not only the pine forest, which is invasive, but the mangrove forest and all the rehabilitation that's been happening. Frost Museum of Science was out there with their MOVE program, and they've invested countless dollars in restoring that North Point area. I mean, it's all gone.
Why this?
But hold on. Because you know what else happens, in my opinion? They're creating a dangerous condition. They're putting people out there. And what about the drug dealers that come to prey on them? Because again, you were saying, this is our vulnerable population. People don't understand what that means.
Yeah.
They get preyed on all the time. So you bring folks in that are preying on these people. You're now kicking out the population, the working people of Miami from the beaches, from the park, and they'll stop bringing their kids. They'll stop bringing their girlfriends. First, the women will start coming. Then eventually the men will stop coming because, the incidence of violence will increase. And then eventually they'll do what they did at the historic park, which is say, oh, look, nobody uses it. We got to close it down.
Right.
Because you made it so difficult to be there. And now you have this large park that's closed down. And oh, woe is me. What do we do? The park is closed. We now have the sewer line that we paid millions and millions of dollars for. And, some heroic developer comes in and says, I'll save you. I'll put up a luxury high rise. And in the back, we'll put affordable housing facing the sewage plant, which by then, by the way, deep well injection is finished and the smell is pretty much gone. But we now have an ugly view. So we put, the people we don't care about in the back, and we sell the multi-million-dollar units in front to people that don't understand the sensitivity of the area. They move in, a hurricane comes, wipes everything out. Our insurance market crashes, and who's left paying for it all? All of us. All of us.
This whole story homeless, I think, are being used as scapegoats in this. I think this has nothing to do about the homeless and the unsheltered people. I think there's something to do with problems that you're seeing all over the country: Dallas, Los Angeles, San Francisco. Here in South Florida, in your neck of the woods, it's, it's maybe politically incorrect to say this, but it's a problem that's been coming for a long time because of open borders, lack of border security. They fight Ron DeSantis for trying to fix the problem. You get a bunch of people going after him in federal court and doing all these things. All that stuff conflates. It reaches down to the point where these local politicians, frankly, all of them should be thrown out of office. Republicans, Democrats, they have failed. If this is how they respond to something that they've known about for a long time, not in my neighborhood, and then kick them off to Virginia Key without consulting the community the way they did, or the way you describe how this vote happened, which frankly, I don't know if this is America or a banana republic or what's going on here, how that vote happened, then they have no business being in office. They have all this money. They have all these great groups. They have Camilla's House. They have many other organizations that want to help. I don't think they're talking to them. If they were talking to them, this would not have happened. I doubt many of these advocates would have said, okay, let's put people out here in some camp somewhere. I mean, that's just so, first of all, it's insensitive. But secondly, it's a health problem, not just for them, it's for the community. It's creating, in other words, they're breaking their own laws to try and do something because maybe they want to make way for developers. Look, I'm shocked. I'm happy for Miami, by the way. I see the growth. I see the opportunity, but I have family members. This is a little personal for us because I have family members who are hardworking people down there, spent their whole lives working good jobs. They can't find affordable housing in Miami. Their rents go from $2,000 a month to $5,000 a month to $8,000 a month, and they got nowhere to go. I mean, they start and put 2 and 3 people, 2 and 3 families in homes, and it's as if nothing doesn't matter. Let more people live, no problem.
The big push now is for co-housing units, so that you so that you can share an apartment with a total stranger.
Well,
co-housing, you mean with is that legal?
No, but check this out. In one of these commission meetings last year, Joe Carollo jokingly and almost very mockingly said that we should create an adopt a homeless program where the city would pay you to house somebody that's having housing insecurities as a remedy.
Wow.
So there's a couple of reasons why an individual could be experiencing homelessness, right? And it's not just life decisions. It's not just work. It's not just family. Anybody can be one bad decision, one death, one instance away from being in this.
It's a circumstance that can happen to anybody.
Yeah. Listen, it takes, anyone. we know what the cost of healthcare is in this country. It's one accident. It's one illness, not even directly, just a family member. And
thank you for bringing that up because we want to make sure we're clear on that. We're not coming at this from a judgmental place or on the contrary, we want to explore the root of the issue and really think about what this means for everybody across the board, not just the people that don't like it.
And obviously this topic is something that can be very politicized as we've all mentioned, but there's an environmental impact on this proposal. This impacts businesses. This also impacts tourism.
Right.
And you can view it from different lens. So I'd like to focus on one lens, the social lens first.
Right.
Jason brought up a good point that this is very insensitive. I think the reason this is insensitive is because you're just putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. Like, this doesn't address the root of homelessness. Again, this is a tree that has many different roots. And it's very hard to say this one line is the reason why 50% of all homeless population in Miami doesn't have a house or doesn't have home or doesn't have work. There's a variety of things. But in this plan, there is no type of job training, no type of screening, no type of vetting that says, we understand you're in this condition, but what are we going to do to get you out of this condition? Because the way how I see it, when you see a quote like nobody wants homeless in their backyard, I'll just put you in another backyard that's not mine.
Right.
And that's pretty much how I see this being. Miami is obviously on the up and up. We're getting a lot of migration from New York, from California. Our prices are going up and we're having new Miamians. When you look at other cities and the homeless problems that they're having, I believe that some cities kind of so when I was in California working petition projects, I saw the elected officials there and they would create community-led organizations that were funded by local governments that would actually go and provide services directly. I don't see any type of those being proposed. And I mean, you can use tax dollars with a nonprofit that will go to these camps, get them out of camps, get them resources, and make sure that they have food, clothes, water, and resources and job training. There's one organization in particular that I want to point out, which is Goodwill South Florida. Goodwill South Florida employs the largest community of homeless and disabled individuals in South Florida. So where are the connections to Camilla's house? And well, really more the government, because Camilla's house already has these kind of vetting and job pathway programs. But what I'm saying is that's a way cheaper solution. So Jason, I wanted to ask you a little bit about property, like just how expensive could this be to create these housings? Because you got to build the house, you got to build the sewage in a place that has no
They're
sewage.
mobile.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of thing. It's an awesome observation, a great point that I wanted to connect to some of our international work. When the U.S. government does foreign aid programs, for example, that we do disaster housing, that sort of thing is a lot more organized than what I'm seeing here. But the point is, Miami-Dade County, city of Miami, it's not as if they don't have the laws and the regulations and the money already in place to help serve that community and be able to create this solution that's not government driven. And I can't quite understand how back in the 1990s, when you had the governor, you had a whole commission that dealt with this thing, you have the homeless trust, there's money going into that. That is not a freebie, folks. People are being taxed. There's a food and beverage tax that gets imposed on businesses that food and restaurants, entertainment, I think that make $400,000 or $500,000 a year. Where is that money going? Who is working on these projects? Look, I have a quick little anecdote for you. And again, I'm not going to use names because I don't want to get people in trouble. But I was talking to someone, a family member of mine was talking to someone in Miami-Dade County government about this housing issue down there, the crisis that they're having. And I was told that there are people living in Camilla's house right now that are grossing $100,000 a year and have nowhere to go. And they're being forced into this situation because they can't find affordable housing or housing prices that are somewhat within market range. We don't know what's causing that. You guys would know better. But what I can't quite understand is, where are the leaders down there? I understand, look, if I'm a property owner in South Florida, taxpayers want to feel safe. They want to have clean streets. I get all that. We want to have security. We want to have our police officers, law enforcement focusing on where there's the most need. At the same time, you want to be able to make sure the fundamental rights of all our citizens are taken care of. Where are the leaders trying to come up with solutions to these problems, not setting up an encampment that would not be within the current? I mean, you couldn't allow a private company to do what these people are proposing to do, from what I've read, in Virginia Key. So why are they even proposing this, number one? And secondly, how are they using existing programs to help address this problem? And what are the real numbers that we're talking about? By the way, some folks who are unsheltered don't want to be forced to live in certain places. And guess what? If they don't want to live there, we shouldn't be forcing people to live there. So there's a give and take to this. Homeless issue is a centuries-old problem. We're not going to fix it overnight. But South Florida's done a pretty good job. The state of Florida has done a pretty good job to deal with this. Where are the leaders in this community stepping up and challenging these politicians from making these reckless statements and wasting taxpayers' time and using the homeless? Because they're using the homeless issue, I think, for another issue. I don't know what that is, but
it's their elections.
That's even more outrageous. But I thought they're maybe trying to do a land grab down there or something. But my point is that you have all these programs. You have a tax that's supposed to be used for this sort of thing. Millions of dollars go to this every year. Is civil society in Miami being consulted for and because this doesn't seem like they were. Where are the leaders down there? What's happening? Why aren't they trying to come up with a solution than these, like you said, Band-Aid on a gunshot wound?
It's an election.
Before we dive into elections, because that's going to be a big one. I'm sure you guys have seen, as we drive through certain parts of Miami, these abandoned homes, buildings, condos, they're all boarded up.
Right. They are boarded up. Yeah.
Why aren't we using any of those?
Exactly.
Like the one by
exactly.
The
they're all over in Wynwood, in the Grove. Yep. I've seen them.
Even there are parts of Little Havana. When I was down there in April, I had not been in Little Havana in a long time, and it's changed completely from when my family came from Cuba back in the 50s and 60s. There are whole buildings shuttered up. Why aren't developers saying, "Hey," or deregulate? Okay, deregulate. give tax incentives, give developers, incentivize them to go in there, create housing, do something. They got land. We got land to do this with. You got old buildings to do this with. Why aren't you deregulating? Why aren't you giving people tax incentives? Get in there and fix the problem. Not doing this sort of thing that, frankly, is outrageous. That you're using the homeless people for political reasons, if that's what's going on down there.
Because you have developers that are accumulating vast areas of land and then seeking SAPs to put in entire projects.
What's an SAP?
Special area plan.
Special area plan.
I'm not familiar with that. So could you guys educate me on that a little bit?
It has to be larger than I don't know if it's 5 or 8 acres, something like that. But then they can seek special zoning and special.
Like they get special permission to be able to build a higher building because I have more land or something like that.
And one of the issues is a lot of there was an SAP that came up in Commissioner de la Portilla's district that got deferred. That goes into where the Miami Produce Mart is. And you see that's an area that's just like that. It's all, boarded up because the developer has bought all this area and they want to put in a big project. That's one of the projects that has it was like over 2,000 units. And I don't know if that's actual apartments for individuals or rooms for that co-housing. But it's a large area. And these are buildings that are going to sit there for a long time, untouched, unused, while they get redeveloped. And then you get into a discussion with what's good development and what's not. You have climate gentrification, which is real. You have gentrification in lower income neighborhoods where folks are losing their homes because we're putting in,
West Brickell.
Yeah.
And what happens next? But one of the big things that's happening too, some of these areas abut city park property. And sometimes they get that piece of land so that they can finish the project, and then they put in, replacement park space. And one of the things that I keep hearing is this rooftop park thing. I'm like, wait a minute, you're replacing actual parkland where children can run and play games, and you can sit there with a blanket, whatever, you do park things, and you're putting it on a rooftop on a high rise and calling that a park. A public park.
That's not accessible.
Well, they say, you can access it. Really? How do I have to show you my ID to get up the elevator? Or
I have to live
it's a patio.
Yeah.
First of all, it's a patio. And second of all, it's not real public access. It's like, I'm going to build a public park, but in front of it, I'm going to put up a massive wall. And then I'm going to put this one little door and everybody can walk through, but I'm going to watch.
I'm going to have a bodyguard there. And if you don't live here, you can't go. Sorry, you got to go to the other part.
Right.
I really do want to get into the whole election concept.
Let's do it.
Because one of the things that I've noticed, especially, and I really do hold the belief that most elected officials are doing it for the right reasons. Like, I don't want to have the framework of like, everybody's evil and, politics is a zero-sum game. In order for me to win, you got to lose, or somebody has to lose. And kind of in our system, there's that compromise. So the way how I see this proposal is a lot of compromise. And by compromise, I don't mean of the issue, I mean politically. So here's what I mean. The biggest thing here is, why did DLP switch his mind? Why did he change it? Because if he wouldn't have, this wouldn't be happening. He was the deciding vote. And I want to bring up a metaphor that one of my clients told me. He said, politics is like sailing. And I've never sailed. I live in Miami, but I never go on boats. But it's like sailing. There's really two ways to sail. You either sail so close to your opponent or your adversary that if the wind were to blow in any direction, it affects you both the same way. Or you sail the other direction and hope the wind screws him over, and then you get the lead.
Right.
In this analogy, I think DLP is sailing so close to Joe Carollo because both of these gentlemen have the intent to run for mayor in 2025. So DLP, I believe in his heart, he knows this is a bad idea. He knows that this isn't good. And like you said earlier.
But why would he risk upsetting so many people in the city? But that's the thing.
He's not upsetting no voters. He's not upsetting anything. It's that Joe Carollo would have an advantage over him in a scenario where, well, look, my opponent here doesn't care about homeless people.
Right.
My opponent
but neither
here,
does he.
No, But check me out. You have to understand the framing here.
Yeah.
Forget what the implications are. Let's talk about what I can put on a flyer.
It's one of those, I have a plan, whether it's good or bad, doesn't matter. I just have a plan.
It doesn't matter what it is.
Right.
I am championing homeless issues because look at what I proposed in the legislation. Forget what it does. Forget what it is. My opponent didn't do anything. He actually voted against it. Good plan, bad plan. He has no plan. I have something. Mm-hmm. So this is what I mean by DLP, Diaz Loportilla, is sailing so close to his opponent that whatever the wind blows, however it pulls, doesn't matter. We have the same look. We have the same face. You did something about the homeless, so did I. We're not talking about what it is. It's about I am participating in this issue. By him voting for it, he can't, or Carroyo in the future can't say, my opponent doesn't, he has nothing on this. No, he does. He voted for the same thing I did. Right. And vice versa. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. And that's kind of how I see it. Like, forget your politics, forget what you think. How is this going to play out to a voter base? How is this going to go? Because at the end of the day, let's say it passes, let's say, because again, you have to play hypotheticals. What happens if it does? What happens if it doesn't? How does the environment shift? Let's say it doesn't. The environment doesn't move. Let's say it does. The environment still doesn't move. Because whichever way the wind blew, we're still going the same way. So if you know that your adversary is going to take a direction, and if you know that going the opposite could harm you, I'm not gonna sail the other way. The only reason I'm sailing the other way is if I know that the direction that it's blowing, the wind's blowing, is the wrong one. You see that kind of the Games of Thronesian, it's not about the issue.
Right, which is so sad.
So to Jason's point, it's politicized. It's not about what's better for the homeless, what's better for how much money. It doesn't matter. What matters is how is this going to play out before voters? How can I portray my efforts in the most favorable light? Because right now, all I see here is two prospective candidates that are tackling and combating the homeless issue.
I mean, look, if you had politicians down there, like starting with the city of Miami mayor, who I think is more concerned about saving his political hide than doing his job, I think you wouldn't have problems like these. Because again, I don't see leaders. I just see politicians angling on election and see who's going to hold the seat of who. I mean, you have people here who are the sons and daughters of former politicians. It's like they hand these seats around, and you don't get new blood in there. You get these people who've been in power forever. I think all those people got to be removed. They got to be thrown out. You got to bring new people in, a new generation of leader down there that's not concerned about doing this voter, seat. I hate to say it, but it's like they're like laundering their seats. Okay, you go next, I go next, I go here, I go there. I mean, what is that? I mean,
they get groomed for their
seats. It's embarrassing.
Well, respectfully, they get groomed for their seats. You see this in elections all of the times. In a prior election, a former legislative aide gets groomed to replace the representative who she works for. But how could she not? With the 4 years of all of the political leveraging and networking that one can do. So I do agree with you, but I hold a way more starker opinion of the reality to beat this dynasty, because at the end of the day, this is, we all seen Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
We've all seen Game of Thrones.
We're waiting for
these are families. You've heard the last names. You know the names. And again, power needs to stay in the family. Keep the family close. Now, in one of the elections that I worked in, we came very close to being the usurpers, the ones that will remove you from power. But unfortunately, and I just want to kind of talk about like Miami's voters in general.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the older you are, the more likely you are to vote. And the older you are in Miami, the more Republican you are. And again, I'm not here to talk about politics, but I'm here to talk about contadito.
It's a reality. It's a reality. I'm going to give you turkey and you're going to vote.
Because listen, Jason, when I come here,
you're killing me. You're killing me, man. You're killing me with that.
Tengo duodo.
You gave me pastelito guayaba. I am voting for you.
Yeah.
But here they made a mistake, I think, and that's that they underestimated.
Yeah, they overreached
where they were going. They didn't think that anybody would push back. And they didn't understand just how beloved this island is. and how fed up people are that there's always a harebrained idea coming down the path.
They manage with this harebrained idea to upset the left and the right, the residents, everybody. You just upset everyone.
I have never seen, and I keep saying this, I have never seen so many facets, different facets of a community come together this aggressively, this united on an issue. This isn't a people that want to use a park issue. This isn't a homeless advocate issue. This is an everyone in Miami issue. People are like, stop, just stop. And they're still sitting there going, we're going to pause it.
I will say
for 6 months, the same 6 months that we need to buy the sheds.
I will say it is impressive because you do bring something up. Unfortunately, we're not a very politically active community, right? No. It really is like
we are now.
It's an acquired taste, right? Like nobody's really out here going to protest like that. But then if you talk about kind of like when the state locked down, the BLM movement, and of course these are national issues. This is actually hyper local. But if you guys go to your Instagram page, you guys had hundreds of people come out to protest the Virginia Key.
It was amazing. We had initially, I looked at it and it was about 250 people. Within about a half hour, there were about another 100 that showed up. And then as the day progressed, easily we went 450, 500 people. And they spread on it. And it is a large area. So you get that many people there and they just spread. And these were not just mountain bikers and paddlers. These were people that go to the beach and people that run the trails and people that just come to hang out. I mean, it was everyone. I got old ladies that come during the week that couldn't come out. We have thousands of emails from people supporting us. And it's really, I'm getting older. My husband's had some health setbacks. We were talking about starting to wind down. And this comes up and I find myself thrown into this. And I said, what the hell? Somebody has to stand up for this. Well, what have I got to lose? I got nothing to lose here. Yeah. Because if you push this through for whatever reason, and let's say for the sake of argument that this is truly an altruistic, benevolent plan. Okay. Right. I'm still screwed. Have
the best of intentions.
I'm screwed. Well, we do the programs that we offer, and if I'm sure people are going to come out and call me all sorts of things, go at it. Who cares? It's when I go to bed at night, I sleep soundly knowing that I've done good things. And it's a shame that I can't continue to do it for a multitude of reasons. And they're within their right at some point in time in the near future, not now because my lease is not up, but at some point in the near future, they are within their right to tell me they don't want to do business with me anymore. However, I think that goes back to poor leadership and poor management. How do you actually take a public-private partnership that actually works, that actually does the things that P3s are supposed to do, and tell them, forget it. Never mind.
You're brave.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just dumb. I'm just dumb.
No. I'll tell you why. Because now that you brought that up, I'm like, oh wait. So in a year, you gotta reapply for the lease to the same people that just told you that, hey, So I kind of have a follow-up to that. How do you think, when this airs, when obviously we circulate this, because we obviously have the intention of circulating this, how do you think they're going to react to you? And
well, I don't think I know how they're reacting to me.
She's already seen it.
I'm seeing it. Right, I had code enforcement hanging out on Monday when the film crews were hung out to try to get the live in action, bust. They left and then they came back and parked in our rear lot and they were there a few minutes. And then another film crew showed up and then they left.
And I can imagine before this issue, you hadn't seen code enforcement that much.
At all.
So this brings.
I had auditors pop up on Friday out of the blue. Because you know what? They are visiting all the city concessions.
Listen,
all of a sudden,
I'll never turn down an opportunity to say my piece on Joe Carollo, but it's a known fact, and there were actually cases on this that were brought to the city of Miami of Joe Carollo using code enforcement, Miami-Dade police officers to intimidate businesses, particularly Ball and Chain. Mm-hmm. The relationship that Joe Carollo has with Bill Fuller, the owner of Ball and Chain, right there on Calle Ocho, is so vast that this man is now taking him to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So we're working with individuals that
Ball and Chain, not sorry to interrupt
Yeah.
you, but just for people that a lot of our listeners are new to Miami, it's a historical venue.
It's where you go if you're trying to get the best mojito. It's where you go.
It's been there for what, 40 something years?
It's been there for.
I've only
By
walked
the
out.
way, it's pretty
It
good.
was really hot, but it was packed. It was packed inside. It was full of people.
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
point is, this has a it's in one of the most touristic locations in Miami, and there's beef between the commissioners and business owners. So if you're talking about a productive government, why is it that the actual government is intimidating business owners? Why is it that you're having cops, off-duty cops, stake out a business to just try and catch something, anything? And this has been caught.
Isn't that what they did in communist Cuba?
Exactly? It's just, and
Let
it's
me
so
ask you.
crazy because
Let me ask you guys something. Because, by the way, stop teasing me with those pastelitos. Take them out of the shop.
only if you vote for me.
You're killing me,
the
man.
only
You're
thing worse is that I can smell them.
Oh, and between the coffee and the guayaba, I've gained like 5 pounds just looking at it. But say, look, I've been out of the Miami political scene for a long time, and I'm hearing you all talk, and I'm learning so much about what's happening down there. And man, that frustrates the heck out of me, because to hear this sort of thing still happening in such a beautiful community with wonderful people. I mean,
Yes.
I have fun. I mean, I was born and raised down there, and I love it. And I hear this sort of thing, and you just said something that struck a chord. It's like, what is this, communist Cuba? Like we're going out there and using power and thuggery. And
I mean, you would
to
think we
do
would have
things.
learned from our
Yeah, that's
experience
right.
that this is
We
not
should-
how we govern.
You don't do that, and you don't. My family's Cuban. I was born here.
I am
so-
Cuban. I was born there.
So I'll
Me
take some
too.
license to make some cultural observations that maybe are not politically correct, but this sort of thing reminds me of just a certain group in our community that has this elitist way of approaching problems. And frankly, it's why Fidel took over the island. You had all these people warring with each other, and that's for another show. We can talk about that some other time. But I'm seeing this, by the way, what gives me hope is that I'm seeing a new generation of political leaders stepping up. Like you have Martha Bueno running against in the Miami-Dade County race. I think in fact, I found out about this through her and some of our conservative contacts and the whole Bitcoin world and all that, some stuff I heard about stuff happening in Miami and the race she is running and challenging. She even got the Miami Herald to endorse. I don't know how that happened. I don't believe half the stuff the Herald writes, but hey, they're right on that race. People should go out and vote for people like Martha Bueno and folks like her who are challenging the establishment. And that was my point. You have these establishment politicians, these establishment machines that think they can get away with this stuff. And I don't know what the voter turnout is in Miami these days, but I bet you it's pretty darn low.
It's really low.
We have more voters on the petition. It's not our petition. It's one of the girls from the bike club put it together. We've got more local people signing that petition than voters that showed up. But I will tell you something, that those people are angry. And they remember, and they're going to show up at the polls.
They have to, and that's what's great about this is that you're having a whole generation of new voters and new people. That group of people that went out there to protest, that was a left-right coalition. Those are people on the right. Those are people from all walks. That's the sort of stuff that we see in Washington, by the way. When we always are trying to move big things in Washington, a lot of times you have to create these ideologically diverse groups of people to come together and push the establishment to do the right thing. And I see something like that happening in your project. And I hope people stay engaged. I hope they go out there, because you got to hold these politicians to account, because I see regulatory overreach. I don't see deregulation. I see abuse of the regulations and the zoning laws. And I also see potentially an unlawful infringement with your agreement. They're doing stuff to you that I don't have all the facts, but from what I've read, there's some legal problems there for the city as well. And they are stepping on it, as we say in Washington speak. And they're going to be the people behind the elephant at the circus. You know what those people do, right? The people who walk behind the elephant.
They poke it with a stick. Is that what
That's
they do?
right. That's right.
With a stick.
Yeah.
And they're picking up certain stuff that they're doing. So on the one hand, it's horrible, frankly, the way they're politicizing the homeless issue, because they should not be doing that to the most vulnerable in our society.
Yeah.
And frankly, they should be held to account for doing that. But they're doing a lot more. And I hope that there's this new generation of folks jumping in there like you all, staying engaged, be community leaders. We need folks to jump into politics and shake up the establishment, because this is how we change that system and bring new people into the system that put markets and people first, not government first. And these are people who, by the way, are living. I can't believe certain people are still in office in Miami and in Miami-Dade County. These are generations of people who've been there forever. I don't get it.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody that is maybe aware of the issue very, lightly, and who heard that quote of, well, no one wants homeless people in their backyard, and they're like, well, you know what? Yeah, let's put them somewhere. How is this really going to affect us as citizens, as visitors to Miami? What impact would you say this is going to have?
What impact?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think what would I say to them is what I actually heard this from Ken Russell, and I agreed with him on that. It was about creating supportive transitional housing.
Mm-hmm.
So actual places where they can actually, the thing is, okay, so from what the professionals that work with the population say is when they're in crisis, you have to treat them in place.
Right.
And then move them into shelters and then move them into transitional housing. And that's where the disconnect is. We don't have enough of that transitional housing, which this plan supposedly addresses. The problem is it doesn't, because it's isolated.
Mm-hmm.
So you're away from jobs, transportation. I mean, I'm just repeating the same stuff, so I don't want to go too deeply into it. But what I would say is to people that are coming in is that other cities have had successes in creating additional transitional housing, but we also have to help not our homeless people, but the people that are becoming homeless because they can't afford rent. And I mean, how much are we going to spend, and how many families, not people, families can we help stay in their homes? When we start approving projects, we have to demand that there be true affordable housing, not workforce housing where you have to make like $80,000 a year to even afford the rent.
Right.
So something that's really, and you all can share this if correct me if I'm wrong on this, but something that strikes me about what I'm seeing in Florida, South Florida right now, is you're seeing a lot of working, blue collar families being pushed out. People who've been here for generations, my parents' generation, my in-laws' generation. What's happening down there that these folks are being displaced and no one is trying to build new housing, because you can only go up, right? So how far can you build? You can't go all the way into the Everglades, because when you hit Chrome, it's only so far you can build.
Well, what are folks doing?
They're trying. So what are folks doing?
They're trying to go past Chrome.
Well, I think the Miccosukee will have something to say about that. Trust me, they're not going to let them infringe on their tribal lands. And hey, we have their back on that one, by the way. But let me ask you, what are folks doing? Are they letting people build higher? Are they trying to rezone to build different type of housing?
Yeah.
What's happening down there on that issue?
It's a mix, but there's a lack of transitional zoning. For example, the transition between single family to duplex, where you go to that T30, T3R, and then you go into the T4, T5, that T4 layer, which is like the townhouses, and that's
you're
sort
talking
of
about
that's
like a
missing.
different type of housing units,
different density too.
Right.
So what's ended up happening is that during Miami 21, some of the areas were upzoned. So you have properties along US 1 that got upzoned to a zoning designation that allows buildings, and then next door you got a house. So you got somebody that's building a zero lot line because we didn't make provisions for the homes that were there. And this was a litigation that I may still be ongoing, but they put up a building and the balconies were abutting the property line, so that when the homeowner and her teenage daughter were in the swimming pool, everyone in the building was just kind of looking down at them. Yeah. I mean, we have issues where permits are issued on plans that violate code, and then they don't do anything about it. So that there was an issue in the Grove where the homes were built so close to the lot line that fire couldn't get to the back of the house. And instead of making them tear it down, they're like, "Oh, oops."
Let's rezone it.
No, they didn't rezone it. They just let it go. But heaven forbid that your shed be too close to your fence, or that you cut down a tree that's sick, because then they're going to come after you and fine you $25,000. But when the grocery store on Coral Way that took down all the mature trees, clear cuts the lot, they only get like a $5,000 penalty, and they have to put up little saplings without sufficient, water or anything else. And it's a joke. It's like the people that knew or should have known get away with it, but the homeowners and the residents that are just trying to make their space a little better, they get punitively penalized. And
wow, it's there was a story of a I'm not going to say his name because people may know who he is, but there's a very well-known Cuban political prisoner who spent a long time in the Gulag prison down there. Mm-hmm. And he was telling me that when he came to this country 6 years ago, he had to live in a house, a 4-bedroom house with 5 families in the same house.
Wow.
In Westchester. And they were charging them $2,000 a month per family.
That's pretty extreme.
$2,000 a month per family
to share a home.
That's
incredible.
And that's
nuts.
insane.
That's not okay.
No, it's not okay. That's first of all, it's a slumlord situation in my opinion, because the house was apparently a complete mess. Plumbing wasn't working properly. It violated I don't know how many zone or a lot of things. But the thing is that that was 6 years ago. I can't imagine what's happening now. And some of the folks that we've interacted with who've approached us for help, it's rough because they're running out of options and people are just leaving. So I don't know who said on the podcast earlier, the new Miami. This new Miami, what is it? Is it a foreign investment haven? Is it more international than U.S.? I mean, what's happening down there? What is this new Miami going to look like? Because on the outside, those of us up in D.C. and we see every now and then all these stories about Russians and Chinese and international investors and coming in there and flooding the city with money. Is it true those apartment buildings on Brickell are empty? I mean, where is this new Miami going, and what is this displacement happening with old Miami? And can you really fix it? I don't think this problem you're having in Virginia Key I'm pretty convinced it's connected to some of this, but it's really just a Band-Aid fix. It's not going to correct the problem long term. And even though if you follow the numbers, the homeless numbers are still quite low and still going down. So what exactly is all this? Is it really about homelessness, or is this more of the city changing and becoming a new type of city where you're gentrifying areas of the city, probably erratically? Because when you drive through, again, Little Havana looks nothing like the Little Havana I grew up in, to where we're going now. I mean, what is this? Because this is hitting in Westchester, and it's hitting all the way out in Chrome and Kendall.
I mean, we're gentrifying middle class people. It's no longer a low income situation. If you work for a living, you are at risk of losing your home. And we haven't even touched on taxes and insurance, because listen, what happened here, Esther, Irma was and Kendall everywhere. What happened after Irma here? I don't know that this city would have survived a real hurricane. That was a tropical storm that hit us.
Well, what happens if a hurricane hits Virginia Key and you have this camp there? What happens then?
Well, they evacuate them, and then the little houses are gone, because mobile doesn't mean movable. Mm-hmm. It takes a long time. It takes us 2 days to pack our gear for a storm. We know, because we have to do it often. And that's just kayaks. So we just shove them in there.
So who provides security? I mean, who controls
that would be like a government contract. So in the commission meeting, and this is where you have to ask the question of, like, how do these people use the money? Right. Because obviously you have to build the mobile homes. You have to build the pipes, the sewage, and create this environment. But then you got to have people that manage the property. You're going to need security. You're going to need amenities. It costs to manage the property that they proposed for 1 year, $800,000.
Wow.
Just off of the potential bid that they're and that's a rough estimate.
Right.
So it's like,
how many people can stay in their homes with $800,000 that you don't have to worry about them becoming homeless?
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me ask you something.
And here's what else. One more food for thought.
Yeah.
How much of an attractant to homeless individuals in other parts of the country is this?
Yeah.
It's going to be a magnet. I mean, let me ask you something.
I feel sorry for the people in Brickell and the roads, because they're not going to Key Biscayne. They're going to go to the mainland.
How many people are they going to put in the supposed camp that they want to build there?
In the commission meeting, they proposed that it would be for 150 to 200, but now that number has dropped a little bit lower.
For the pilot. For the pilot, 50 to 100, but then they said 150 to 200, and then they started throwing other numbers around. So
there's no building in Little Havana or some other community that can be updated and fixed for 100 to 200 people. Get someone to go in there, a developer, get some tax incentives.
Here's the thing:
and help them build up a facility.
But here's
for
the
this
thing:
purpose.
why does any one neighborhood need to absorb the entirety of the problem?
Well, anywhere wherever.
But wait, hold on. Stick with me on this one. This is a citywide problem. I live in Shenandoah. We have a number of ALFs, and at times we've had problems with aggressive panhandling, and they were addressed. Why can't we have smaller programs and maybe a little bit more costly to operate?
Not micro-housing, but
no, but maybe we service 20 people or 15 people or 10 people, and then have another group in another area, because they're already there. They're living on the streets right now. Right. We're giving them a place to go where they can shower, where they can sleep, where they can have some privacy, and we can start providing some services. So we are eliminating them from the street, but at the same time, we're not displacing them from the and if there's something I learned from this whole process was the term houseless. And originally I was like, but it is. They're houseless. They have their homes are just, they have homes. They form these communities, and I wouldn't live like that, and you wouldn't live like that, but they do. And, everyone deserves dignity.
Exactly. Well, that's exactly it. And that's something that I've learned from the Missionaries of Charity and some other Catholic organizations that I know work, like here in Washington, over in Washington, D.C., the Missionaries of Charity work in some of the roughest neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. imaginable. Yeah. And the one thing they've taught me over the years is, number one, they're not homeless, they're customers. And that's what they call them. Right? They're customers. And second, you have to treat people with dignity and respect. You don't haul them off into some camp and say, oh, the problem's going to get fixed for all the reasons you say. And you're right. If there were, and I see in South Florida, a lot of places where you can incentivize a lot of entrepreneurial folks down there who I am certain would step up and would want to help if the current infrastructure can't do it, and be able to deregulate, provide tax incentives, and do things that preserve human dignity and move product. America has shown we can do that. We do it all over the country. We have organizations like Habitat for Humanity. We have a lot of organizations willing to do it. And those marginal folks who can't, because they have either psychological or some other type of impediment that need help, there's places to have that addressed in Miami, because we're blessed with a lot of great infrastructure to do that sort of thing with. I still don't understand what is happening with this Virginia Key project. I still think it goes beyond the homeless. I think it has nothing to do with the homeless, frankly. I think that maybe it is politics, but there's a lot more there, and I hope you all stay engaged and that all these groups stay active, because these folks have to be held to account, because it's only that way are you going to be able to change that, so we don't have to have this happen again. It's going
what else we have to do? We have to take this in front of the Spanish community.
Amen. Yeah, you got to do that too. Yep.
Because our people need to hear this too, and we're not doing a good job of that.
Jenny, could you ask that question again that you kind of brought us to this point? The last question you asked.
Yes, I was curious as to what you all would say to somebody that's kind of like on the fence with the issue. Like, I don't want to look at homeless people. How is it going to affect me if they dump them all in Virginia Key? I just won't go there.
Okay.
What would you say to them?
What I would say is, you can't view this problem black and white. You can't view this issue just because it doesn't directly affect you doesn't mean that it's not going to affect you indirectly. Right. So I like to see a lot of political issues and not just like homelessness. When you talk about like, how do you message? Because, in elections, messaging is very important. How am I going to describe or talk about this in a way that is going to be favorable for me? And what I like to tell, like the canvassers that we hired to go and talk to people is, whenever you talk about issues, you kind of have to talk about it almost like you're a doctor. Yeah. Like and I don't want to say that, like, I don't want to use the word disease, because that's not the right messaging. Right.
There's a symptom.
But there's symptoms.
Yeah.
And these symptoms come with signs, and there are things that you can do to be preventive. And there are things that once you have the issue, there's a prescription. So when you look at the causes of homelessness, we all know that it's multi-factor, right? It's not, I can't just point and say, I had a passing in my family and that's 40% of all the homelessness in the United States is a dead family member. You lost your house and now what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You can't point and say it was drugs. You can't point and say I lost my job. You can't even say it's a choice. You can't just quantify that. There's no so I would say first and foremost, anytime when you deal with this homelessness issue, you need a lot of sympathy for the people going for it. But sympathy doesn't mean throw a bunch of money at an idea and hope something sticks. Because I promise you that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
Right. I honestly think that there's something Jason said, you need a lot of entrepreneurial endeavors. So there's one organization that actually when I was at Community that I did a podcast with Danielle, and she has a group that actually gets together. And these are just college kids. These are just college kids. I mean, I'm pretty sure they all graduated by now, but these are just young adults that come together once a week. They do like food drives and they pull it together. Imagine if she could get some type of funding, and it doesn't have to be $800,000 to manage a property,
right? But
there could be mechanisms that the local government does to incentivize either micro loans, micro projects that actually will affect it. And that's just on a small scale. And I guess that we as Miami have a really negative history. And this is something that I wanted to kind of open up to you guys about the what was it? Portage. I always messed up the
Pottinger.
There we go. There we go. So
I wouldn't have gotten that either.
No.
The Pottinger.
Because Miami-Dade has had a very negative history dealing with the homeless issue. In the late 80s, 90s, the police literally would just arrest the homeless population because they felt like it. Yeah. They would just, hey, you can't be here, let's go. They wouldn't even take them to jail. They would just take them and move them to the outskirts of Miami-Dade and just leave them there. So there's no respect for them in that regard. And also, like, it's this culture of, tú eres un problema. This is a problem, and I'm just going to put it somewhere else. And what's that saying that if I don't see it, it's not there?
Out of sight, out of mind.
There you go. And that's kind of the same strategy that's happening here, because again, nobody wants the homeless in their backyard. So I'm just going to put it in another backyard. And
yeah, but here's what, what everybody misses is that when they're going to locations where they can seek shelter, and when you vacate that location, somebody else is going to come and fill it. It doesn't stay empty.
As long, I think the one takeaway, at least from the conversation, one of several, and this is an amazing talk, by the way, is we can't lose sight. First of all, I think it's lack of leadership from the elected, and that's clear problem. But also, we can't lose sight again that these are people, these are human beings that have fundamental rights. If they want to be out on the street and they're not breaking the law, just leave them alone. And I think that you can't be ostracizing people that way just because some of them choose to live that way. Some of them don't. Some of them are, but you have to respect the individual's rights. And if they're not breaking the law and they're out doing what they want to do and they're not breaking the law, you have to leave them alone. But when you do have folks falling through the safety net and you have programs already in place and you have the amount of money, millions of dollars that are being collected from tourists, from visitors, from people who go to restaurants, we have to hold these politicians to account and figure out ways to make the most efficient use of that tax. I'm not a big believer in taxes, but if you're going to impose them, do what you're supposed to do with them. And finally, one takeaway from this, again, I made this parallel comparison earlier about foreign aid programs. We help build homes that are 10 times better than these shacks that they want to build for these people in foreign countries around the world all the time. And it's embarrassing that in America, we have this problem, yet we're sending billions around the world in foreign aid. And Florida politicians, Republicans and Democrats, vote for these programs in Washington. All right. And we're not hearing leadership down here. This is a local, state, and federal challenge. And I don't see leaders coming together. I just see these rifle shot, insensitive, and frankly, I don't know. I'm a Republican, and I'm embarrassed that these people claim to be Republicans and talk the way they do about people like these disenfranchised folks, people on the margins of our society. that's not the people in my party. That I don't want people like that in my party, and they should all register another party and go somewhere else because they're not really Republicans, if that's the way they speak. But there are solutions to this. We're blessed with a lot of resources, and we need leaders. And the people protesting what's happening in Virginia Key, I think we're going to have leaders come out of there, and we're going to have people who I think should run for office and challenge these people. And now the battle lines are drawn, and I think you should fight hard and stand your ground down there and force them to come out. When was the last town hall meeting that, not virtual, not a Zoom meeting? When was the last time there was a town hall meeting with these commissioners and your community down there to talk about this in an open, calm, normal way?
Mm-hmm.
I can't recall.
Has there been
the last time we had any town hall meeting was after under Francis Suarez's term as commissioner. They tried
when
to
was
close
that?
off.
When was that? I'm
before
sorry.
he became mayor. They had put delineator poles down 22nd Avenue, and the community revolted. And well, there's a whole other issue related to that and expenditures, and it's something similar, a discussion item that became a resolution without any real public input, and bam, here you go. And it's costing us a lot of money in tax dollars and extra police to guard barricades and legal fees. And it's fiscally irresponsible. And I don't know when it reaches the level of malfeasance, but we sure are dancing around that.
So demand a town hall meeting. Have a meeting with them. Tell them, hey, come out here and let's talk.
For a group that wants, small government, this is a whole lot of government. Whole lot of government. And the
majority of the commission is obviously local government is nonpartisan, but the red and blue is shown everywhere, and the majority of the commission is Republican. Mm-hmm. So it is kind of, and that's a great point you just made. It's interesting because for people that say y'all don't want to step on my rights and take my away, y'all really man.
They're not Republicans.
You know what I'm saying?
Those guys are not. Look, a lot of these local politicians, and I'm just going to not name any of them. You all can pick them later if you want. A lot of them register Republican because they know that's the only demographic, the only party that certain demographics will vote for. But in reality, they're not governing like Republicans. They're governing like
big
government.
Democrats either.
No, they're nothing. They're governing like big government liberals, or maybe worse. I mean, maybe it's just a corrupt, broken system that
needs
to get fixed.
You know what? Because they do watch all this stuff every time that they have people that analyze it. You know what? I'm gonna challenge them to have a conversation.
You need a town hall.
Let's have a conversation.
There. Yes, you do.
Let's talk about it. Not without the rhetoric, without the hype, without the telenovela moments. Seriously.
A lot of those.
Seriously.
Especially those commission meetings.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's like, let's have an adult conversation here and let's try to figure out what we really need. Because if maybe they're legitimate needs, but they haven't been communicated. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Yeah. I mean,
I think someone down there should figure out a way to haul Joe Carollo in and all these commissioners and have a town hall meeting on the record, not a Zoom meeting, but live.
Face to face.
And just talk this thing through.
Raquel Regalado did the Zoom meeting, and I'm glad that she did because it was quick, and I know a lot of people weren't around. But I mean, I would like to see a live meeting, but I'm not gonna penalize her for her position on this. She's taken a strong position that I think is positive for the problem at hand. And this is one of those legacy politicians.
So if you were to actually talk about
what's the position, I don't know.
She's a commissioner. She's a county commissioner for that district.
And what has she said? Like what she
scheduled a Zoom meeting to present what they knew. They've been reviewing the deeds, and she said straight up that once permits were applied for, that they would seek legal intervention because they were look at exercising the reverter clauses in the lease.
Wow!
But they were still being reviewed. So she did take a strong position, and I think that's the type of leadership that we want from our electeds. Which is why I take a step from saying we can't have any legacy politicians because there's institutional knowledge that comes from that. But we have to have politicians that are doing a good job for the people, regardless of whether they come from a family or not, or whether they have a long history or not. We just have to have good representation.
And I'll say one elected official that I actually do want to commend in this is Daniela Levine Cava. When she ran her election in 2020, Bovo was painting her to be like Antifa, defund the police.
Oh, yeah.
And again, like I always said that the Steve Bovo, Daniela Levine Cabo was like a microcosm of like the Trump Hillary kind of dynamic that happened. Right. But what I like about DLC is that apart from how they painted her to be, she's super moderate, like super reasonable, super moderate. And in this issue in particular, she's publicly said, that's the wrong choice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the wrong decision. And I'm going to challenge it because at the end of the day, it still falls under her purview being the mayor of Miami-Dade County. Right. Obviously, it's a city of Miami issue and, you know, the dynamics of the overlap. But what I wish that I could see more is Francis Suarez be a lot more vocal on this because he does have a veto power and he's just been silent. It's the indifference, you know, like, okay, I'm not going to come out in favor of it or against it, but if I just don't say anything, it'll, you know, it's not on me. Per se. And it's crazy because I'm very, very, and that's the only moment I think I'm going to disagree with you, Jason, because I'm actually very fond of Francis Suarez. I actually think the stuff that he's doing with the tech movement and bringing all of this kind of technology hub, New Silicon Valley, I'm actually super in favor of it, you know. But
I think that's great. But what about this housing crisis that's going in Miami right now?
You know, you are right because there was that video of him saying the basically stop being poor.
Yeah, you got
that
not a good look.
That one was definitely bad.
I mean, look, I think that's you guys are much better versed in South Florida politics than I am, and you'll know. But I think when the mayor of Miami is on Fox News trying to talk about national issues, and he has a housing crisis in his own backyard, and he's talking about cryptocurrencies and all, but I'm a big fan of cryptocurrencies. I love that stuff. But
don't work out.
But you really have to focus on the fundamentals. I think go local. And we've been saying to folks in both political parties, I'm happy to be Republican, but we've been saying to the people in the GOP, the future of the GOP is not over here in Washington, D.C. It's local. Right. That's where the future of the nation is, local state government, not up in Washington to see that everything they touch, they destroy, everything they regulate, they will if you let them. And I don't see these local politicians, maybe there are some who are an exception, jumping into this with the energy that I see them jumping into other things. And I think we need them to kind of fix that problem because Miami relies on tourism. Miami relies on financial services. Miami is a vibrant crossroads city. And I see pockets of greatness, but then I see pockets of misery in different parts of the city. And that's not good for the long term. I don't see it as a net positive.
There are a lot of people suffering in this town, and we have to do better by them too.
Yeah. Well, I think let's end it there because you were so eloquent in everything that you just mentioned. I hope we see the best out of this issue, but to stay optimistic, I think that at least people are talking. Right? You've been able to shed some light on things that otherwise maybe a lot of us would just, look the other way. And if anything else is to, as Jason and Nadir, you said, just get involved, pay attention to who our politicians are and go out and vote and really realize that it is in local government, not just go vote when it's a presidential election. But yeah. Everything is local. That's where it matters. I want to thank you all for being here. Jason, thank you for taking your time and sitting down with us. Esther and Nadir, for your expertise. I urge you guys, those listening and watching, to continue the conversation. Reach out to these guys on social media with more questions, and really dig in there and see what's happening and how we can really get this thing turned around. And
I think the only way this is going to get turned around is if you go to City Hall with those same protesters and you just stand there with big signs and you crash their commission meeting.
It's going to happen.
Because that, unfortunately, elected officials aren't motivated until their elections, their votes, their public esteem is at risk. Because that's the poking the elephant with the stick. Like, yo, you see me, right?
Yeah.
So
hey, this is real. We're not busing kids in from a soccer league to go to City Hall to go, yay, we want more soccer. These are people, these are random people that until this issue were not united and were not organized, and they're angry and they're not giving up. And as we told them, the only real win here is codified protection for Virginia Key. And we're going to start with Virginia Key, and that's probably going to be the beginning of a lot of more protection for public spaces. This is a public park.
Yeah.
And that should never, outside of an act of God, a hurricane, an act of war, that should never have been even considered for something that's been a crisis decades in the making. That's improving. It should be hands off our parks. It's too vital, too limited. We cannot replace this with anything similar. Once it's gone, it's gone.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you for everybody who's listening and watching, or both. And keep the conversation going. And as we always say, time is the top currency. So the fact that you spent it with us means so much.
Thank you for having us.
We'll see you next time. Jason, I look forward to seeing you in person.
Next time I'm in Miami, I look forward to doing it again. And good luck, folks. Get out there. Thank you for those pastelitos. I can smell them from all the way up here. Thank you so much. Good luck. Keep it going.
We're going to have one for you, Jason.
Amen. We'll keep it going and hold them to account.